After a year together, she smirked and said, "I was only with you to make my ex jealous. He's back now, so we're done." I didn't fight it. I helped her pack her boxes into his car and quietly slipped in a small gift she didn't see. Screenshots of her messages about him. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my door crying that he'd left her. We were just sitting on the couch after dinner watching some show I can't even remember, and she looked over at me with this weird satisfied look on her face. After a year together, she just dropped it on me. "I was just using you to make my ex jealous. You finally came back, so we're done." Just like that. I didn't yell. I didn't even really feel surprised. It was more like I'd been hearing a rattling noise in my car for months, and the engine finally died. It wasn't a shock. It just confirmed what I already knew deep down. Her ex, David, came up in conversation way too much. She was always KY about who she was texting, tilting her phone away from me. I'd put the pieces together a long time ago, but I guess I was waiting for her to show her hand. I just didn't expect her to be so proud of it. "Okay," I said. "That's it. Just one word." She looked thrown by that. I think she was expecting a big scene, maybe some begging, something she could use as a final story to tell her friends. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. "So, when's he coming to get you?" She blinked, and the grin on her face tightened a little. She wasn't in control of the reaction, and it bothered her. "He'll be here in an hour. I've got to pack my stuff." "I'll help," I told her, getting up from the couch. And that's when the plan formed in my head. It wasn't some crazy complicated thing. It was simple, and she was going to help me do it. You see, Sarah was sloppy. She was so sure I was clueless that she'd leave her laptop open on the coffee table when she went to the bathroom. She'd leave her phone lying face up while she was in the kitchen. She was constantly messaging her best friend, Megan, and I saw it all. I wasn't trying to spy, I swear. But she made it impossible not to. A text would pop up on the screen. My name would be in it, and I'd see it out of the corner of my eye. So, for the past few months, I'd been taking screenshots. I went into my office while she started throwing her clothes into boxes, not bothering to fold anything. I had a folder on my computer desktop. I just called it stuff. Inside were dozens of pictures of her chats with Megan. There were the messages where she called David a pathetic loser for still being in love with her after she dumped him. There were the ones making fun of how he wasn't great in bed with little jokes about his stamina that she clearly thought were hilarious. She mocked his new apartment, calling it a sad little shoe box, and saying he probably couldn't afford anything better. But the real gems, the ones that made my stomach turn, were the messages where she laid out her whole plan. Use the nice, stable guy. That's me to make David jealous enough to take her back. She had a whole timeline. She wrote another 6 months with the boring guy should do it. David is almost at the breaking point. I printed everything. 22 pages of her own words. Her own casual cruelty. I put them in a neat stack and slipped them into a plain brown envelope. I didn't even seal it. I wanted it to look like it was just some papers he'd left in his car. When I walked back into the living room, she was humming while taping up a box. She was happy, genuinely happy to be leaving me. I just grabbed a roll of packing tape and started sealing the boxes she'd filled. The silence in the apartment was heavy, but it wasn't awkward. It was just over. An hour later, a horn honked outside. She ran to the window like a kid hearing the ice cream truck. "He's here," she said, grabbing her purse. I picked up the first 2 boxes and headed for the door. "All right, let's get you moved out." David was leaning against a nice-looking car, much nicer than my beat-up truck. He gave me a hard look, trying to look tough. He was the guy who won in his mind. I didn't care. I wasn't his problem. I was about to do him the biggest favor of his life. We made a few trips back and forth, loading her stuff into his trunk. Sarah was in full-on director mode, telling me to be careful with one box, telling David to shove another one further in. I just played the part of the helpful, compliant ex-boyfriend. On the last trip, I had the lightest box and the envelope tucked under my arm. While David was busy trying to get the last box to fit in his trunk, and Sarah had run back inside to do one last check for her phone charger, I made my move. I walked over to the driver's side door, which he'd left open. David had his back to me, focused on the trunk. I reached in and slid the envelope of papers into the driver's side sun visor. I pushed it up and it was hidden, but I knew he'd find it. It's automatic. The sun gets in your eyes on the drive home. You flip the visor down. It was a ticking time bomb, and the timer had started. I stepped away from the car just as Sarah came bouncing out of the building. She gave me one last look, a mix of pity and dismissal. No hard feelings, right? Nope, I said. Good luck with everything. She got in the car without another word, and they drove off. I didn't watch them go. I just went back inside my apartment and slid the deadbolt across. It was finally quiet. The next 2 days were all about reclaiming my space. I changed the sheets on the bed, threw out all her half-used toiletries from the bathroom, and rearranged the living room furniture back to the way I liked it. It felt good. The bomb went off 3 days later. I got a friend request on social media from David. I accepted, and a message came through immediately. Hey, I know this is weird, but can I call you? I need to thank you. I sent him my number, and my phone rang less than a minute later. Man, thank you, was the first thing he said. He sounded completely stunned. I found your gift yesterday. Sun was in my eyes on my way home from work. I pulled down the visor, and a ton of papers just fell all over my lap. I pulled over and read every single one. He told me he saw it all. The messages about him being pathetic, the jokes about his apartment, the crude comments about their past, the entire detailed plan to use me to get to him. He said he felt sick to his stomach. He walked inside his apartment, found Sarah unpacking her boxes and humming, and just tossed the papers on the table in front of her. He said she tried to deny it, of course. She said I was a psycho and that I had faked all of it to ruin her life. But he said the messages were so specific, so much in her voice with details only she would know that he knew they were real. Then she started crying. She said she only wrote those things because she was heartbroken and missed him terribly. She tried to shift the blame, insisting he shouldn't trust some papers over her words. But he wasn't buying it. It wasn't just the insults that got to him. It was how calculated and cruel she could be. To her, he wasn't a person, just a trophy to win back to prove something. He told her to pack her stuff and leave. She started yelling, accusing him of throwing away their second chance over some dumb messages. He calmly pointed to the stack of papers and said, "The guy you called a pathetic loser is kicking you out of his sad little shoebox." He threw her own words back at her. Then he moved her boxes to the hallway outside his apartment and told her to get someone to pick them up. He blocked her number right then. I told him, "She's not your problem anymore." He laughed and said, "Man, I owe you big time. You saved me from a disaster." We hung up on good terms, two guys who dodged the same bullet. I felt a sense of relief. The plan had worked perfectly. A few days of calm followed, and I started to feel normal again. Then the next storm hit. Sarah's best friend, Megan, started calling me from a blocked number. I didn't pick up, so she left an angry voicemail, calling me a manipulative jerk for ruining Sarah's happiness. She said Sarah was a mess, crying on her couch, and it was all my fault. She demanded I fix it. The idea that I was responsible for cleaning up Sarah's mess with two different guys was absurd. I deleted the voicemail and blocked the number. But, of course, that wasn't the end. The next move was a social media campaign. Sarah and Megan started posting vague, shady stuff on their stories, like, "Some guys can't handle a strong woman moving on," and "Watch out for the toxic ex who tries to wreck your future." They didn't name me outright, but it was clear who they meant. A few mutual friends fell for it. One of them, Chris, a guy I played poker with sometimes, texted me saying he heard I'd been acting unhinged and should just apologize to Sarah and move on. I didn't bother arguing. I sent him 3 screenshots. One where Sarah called David pathetic, one where she mocked his shoebox apartment, and one where she admitted, "I'm just using him to make David jealous." 5 minutes later, Chris texted back, "Wow, okay, forget that. She's unhinged. My bad, man." That shut down their smear campaign. Facts don't lie. Then came the money grab. I saw it coming. A week after she moved out, I got texts from Megan's phone, but it was clearly Sarah typing. The first one demanded half the security deposit for my apartment. That was ridiculous. I'd lived there for 3 years before she ever moved in, and she never paid a cent toward the deposit. I replied, "You were never on the lease. This is my place. There's no deposit to give you." The next text was a threat. She claimed she'd left an expensive necklace, a family heirloom from her grandmother, in my apartment. She said if I didn't return it, she'd call the police and report me for theft. That was a mistake. I remembered her texting Megan about selling that same necklace 6 months ago to pay for a Vegas trip. I had the screenshot. "Just sold grandma's necklace. LOL. Vegas baby." I sent it to her with a note. "You sure about filing a false police report? That's a crime." Complete silence followed. For a week, I heard nothing, and I thought it was finally over. I was wrong. She was just regrouping. When she couldn't get to me through friends or money, she went for the ultimate weapon, my family. My sister Laura called me, her voice full of concern. She said she'd just spoken with Sarah. Sarah called my family, crying and lying about me having a breakdown, being abusive, and kicking her out. She tried to turn them against me, but I sent Laura screenshots proving Sarah's manipulation. Laura exposed her lies to our family, and Sarah's plan backfired. 2 weeks later, Sarah showed up at my door, looking broken, begging to come back, claiming she made a mistake. I wasn't fooled. I told her she made a deliberate choice, not a mistake, and it failed. She accused me of ruining her life, but I said she burned her own bridges. I closed the door on her, locked it, and walked away, ignoring her yells.